Hello, welcome to Tuesday, November 17th, daily instructional video. Today you will complete your warm-up, describe the scariest place you have been or scariest event you have ever been a part of or attended. What made it so scary? Be sure you are specific. If you can't think of anything, what would the scariest place be for you? And what would make it that scary place? So go to your Google form and complete the Google form warm up, and then come back to the video. All right, today we're going to continue on in the Odyssey with the Cyclops passage. We're going to look at 3 passages when we read where he's describing the Cyclops. I'm going to put these up here for us and go back to the text. So when we left Odysseus, when we left Odysseus, we had covered the lotus eaters. We have seen Odysseus. We've talked about the invocation. You've read about them in the lotus eaters and the Cyclones, which are men that Odysseus, or a race of people that Odysseus and his men saw as an easy target and decided to go ahead and fight them. They had no reason. They had already come from Troy, and they had plenty of wealth carrying back home with them, riches and spoils from war. But again, they were greedy and decided to fight them. And this is where Odysseus' men were mutinous when he wanted to leave. And right here where they're mutinous. And they ended up staying and partying. And the Cyclonians the main forces were able to come back and fight Odysseus and his men. They were well trained how to fight on the beach, on the sand, which Odysseus' men were not, and were able to beat them back. And Odysseus ends up with losing 6 men to each bench on their ship. So he lost quite a bit. 6 benches were empty, so 6 benches of men were empty on each ship. So that was quite a heavy loss. Then they made it to the lotus eaters, who, when you eat their lotus flower, you lose all desire to go home. You forget everything, all your worries. So Odysseus shows his leadership by going in and rescuing the 3 men and taking them back to the ship and having to tie them down underneath the benches so that they could set sail. And he shows again good leadership, that he is just like the invocation said, his desire to get home is not just for himself but for his crew, and he risked his life to go take care of that. We read a little bit yesterday of the Cyclops, where it's kind of ironically how he discusses that these are savage creatures, when he and his men have proven to be savages, like by fighting against the Cyclones who had done nothing to them. He has a description of the cave of where the side of the island that the Cyclops lives on. This Cyclops is known as a prodigious man, a very large man. He was actually separated from the rest of the main Cyclops, so he was kind of isolated to himself. And Odysseus and his men were on the main island. They were kind of off into a cove. And then Odysseus took 12 of his best fighters, and they headed into see the Cyclops. Because Odysseus is curious, which is one of his other flaws that leads him to get into some trouble. He was smart enough, of course, and clever enough to bring with him this wine, this very potent wine, and that he describes that was from Apollo's hollow grove. And he describes that the people that he gave it to him, that they would pour 20 cups of water into this wine, and still the fumes, it was so strong and potent, yet so delicious that nobody ever turned it away. So he's clever enough to know that he needed to bring a gift. And yesterday we talked about, in your slides, discussed Xenia. Try to find that slide. Gone over that. Lotus eaters. Oops. Sorry. I thought it was in the slides. I guess they're in our slides for today. I'm sorry. Let's go over that. Xenia, yeah, here it is. Okay. So Xenia is the ancient Greeks' sacred rule of hospitality. Hosts must be hospitable to guests and provide them with bath, food, drink, gifts, and safety, and escort them to their next stop. In return, the guests must be courteous to their host by telling stories and news from the outside world. They cannot be a burden or a threat to the host. So, in this case, right now, Odysseus is in present time practicing Xenia. King Alcyoneus has taken him in, has bathed him, clothed him, given him food, and is giving him gifts when he goes home, and giving him a safe escort when we get home. And in return, Odysseus is telling him his story about his adventures after Troy. So we'll see the Xenia continuing to play out as it is right now. Odysseus, being a guest, is bringing the gift to give his host, to show respect, and he's expecting that the Cyclops will in turn follow these rules of Xenia, the rules of hospitality. But again, Odysseus and them are breaking these rules. They come in, they are kind of a burden on to the host. First of all, he didn't even know they were there. And they go in, make themselves at home. They eat his cheese. And when the Cyclops comes home, he drops his boughs of wood down. And, or before that, something else Odysseus' men right here wanted to talk about proves to them that they're greedy. They were greedy with the Cyclones. They're greedy again here. They see this as an opportunity when they see the Cyclops cave and all he has. There was a description of all the food he has, these lambs and rams that he has, that his men want to actually take it and leave. And Odysseus even thinks, that's a pretty good idea. But his curiosity, he wants to see what kind of gifts the Cyclops is going to give him. And again, this will all end up leaving him in trouble. They did burn an offering to the gods, of course, always making sure we appease the gods. And then when the Cyclops does show up and he puts his heavy load down, he blocks the doorway with this slab of stone. That we have this Homeric simile, this extended simile, that says it was describing how solid and strong the boulder was, that it would take 24 four-wheel wagons with heaving wagon teams could not have stirred the tonnage of that rock where he wedged over the door sill. So obviously Odysseus' men were not strong enough to push it. So this will be important later on. So when the Cyclops finally, after he's done all the chores, sees Odysseus and his men, he's like, hey, who are y'all? What are you here? He's automatically thinking they're rogues. They're to do harm or, steal his things. And he's, of course, upset. Odysseus and his men, of course, were scared, and they had hidden when he first arrived. But now Odysseus speaks up, take that leadership role, and describes them as the Achaeans, the Greeks who had fought in the Trojan War. And he brags here about who he fought with, Agamemnon, because other people would have known who Agamemnon was and what a terror that he was into leading that Trojan War. As he says here, the whole world knows what city he laid waste, what armies he destroyed. Of course, he's saying all this to kind of intimidate the Cyclops to probably not do any kind of harm to him. He says, we stand beholden for your help and your gifts. So there's that Xenia. Hey, we're looking for you to help us. And oh, by the way, any gifts you have to give us, as a custom is to honor strangers. And then he kind of threatens him. He says, we entreat you, great sir, have a care for the gods' courtesy. Zeus will avenge the unoffending guests. So Odysseus obviously thinks he's being unoffending by making himself at home. But the Cyclops replies, he goes, I don't care about the gods. They don't mean anything to me. And he's even exhibiting some hubris here as he says that, oh, we by far are more powerful than the gods. And then in a second, he has just scoops up two of Odysseus' men and eats them. Before that, he does try to find out where their ships is, but Odysseus just lies again, using his clever, quick wit, and tells him that his ship was destroyed by Poseidon. So he picks these men up and eats them like squirming puppies. He picks them up in the hand, they're squirming in his hand, and he eats them. And it's very, we have a lot of imagery and Homeric simile going here, describing how he bites them and chews them and gaping and crunching like a mountain lining, everything inwards, flesh and marrow bone. It's very, very descriptive. Um, and then after he eats his men, he goes to sleep, passes out. Now Odysseus did go up to the Cyclops while he was asleep and was about to stab him when he stopped. And he really thought of this through, and he's like, but if I stab him and kill him, then there's no one to move the door slab, and then they're stuck, and then they're dead. So he had to come up with another plan. So dawn with fingertips arose. So when it was morning, here's another epithet. You highlight blue. Odysseus, the Cyclops, goes ahead about his morning, eats two more men, and then leaves. And and of course, he puts the stone back. And so he ponders about how can he really hurt him? What would be the worst way to hurt the Cyclops? And he comes up with a plan. He finds an olive tree that's very young and green. When it's green like that, it's very soft and malleable. He describes it that it's like a mass of a lugger of 20 oars. A lugger is a type of boat. So if you look back on those boats in ancient times, they're the ones that had the long oars, and that's how they sail. When the sails were not working, they would row their boats, and that's how big this tree was that he took it and they sharpened it to a fine point, and then they put it into the fire so that it would harden and get hard and hot, and and then they hid it under the dung piles in profusion, which means they hung it. They hid it in where the Cyclops had some like for fire, had some dung chips of dung. So then they decided how they were going to help Odysseus. Remember, they came over with 12 people. He's already now eaten 4 out of the 12 people. So Odysseus has not too many men to choose from. So they cast lots. And in that casting lots, they chose 5 of his best men. All right, so the plan is to blind the Cyclops by sticking that spike into the Cyclops' eye. So when the Cyclops came back that evening, he caught 2 more men. So that's half of his men are now gone. That's 6 total out of the 12. And Odysseus starts talking to the Cyclops, offering him wine and telling him that he had planned to give it to him if he brought him gifts, but of course now he's giving to him anyways. And kind of insults him. He said, "You are mad, unbearable, a bloody monster. After this, will any other traveler come to see you?" And the Cyclops drinks the wine down. Remember how strong it was. And he drinks it down and even asks for more. He asks Odysseus, "Hey, what's your name? And I'll give you a gift." And so he drinks 3 more big bowls, not cups, bowls full of this. And we have him fuddling, and flush came over him, means he was extremely intoxicated. And so Odysseus says, "Hey, you remember that promise that you gave me that if I tell you my name, you'll give me a gift?" He says, "My name is Nobody. Mother, father, and friends, everybody calls me Nobody." And so his gift to Odysseus is that since he told him his name, he will eat Odysseus last. He'll eat all his friends, all his crew first, and he thinks, of course, that's a noble gift to eat him last. And then, of course, he passes out drunk and very descriptive, drunk, hiccuping, and dribbling streams of liquor and bits of men. Very disgusting. So as he passed out, they went and got the stick, they put it in the fire, stoked it, got it really hot. So it's now a very sharp point and very hot and hard. And while he was asleep, they ran that stick and went straight into his eye. And we have this Homeric simile: straightforward we sprinted, lifted it, and rammed it deep in the crater eye, and leaned on it, turning as the shipwright would turn a drill in planking, having my men below swing with a 2-hand strap that spins in the groove. So while the blood ran out around the red hot bar, eyelid and lash were seared, the pierced ball hissed broiling, and the roots popped. So you can imagine sticking something, this red hot stick, into his eyeball, and it's so disgusting, this description. He compares it to a smithy, which is somebody who deals, like a blacksmith, who deals with metals, and whenever metal gets hot, and they mallet and they beat it and then they stick it into the bucket, it screeches and it steams up and boils and bubbles. He's making that comparison there, and that Homeric simile. Okay, so he makes this Homeric simile here, comparing it to the blacksmith with the water and the hot iron going in it and bubbling and screeching. The Cyclops, of course, screams. He gets out. He pulls out the bloody spike, and we thought that this was going to be a great, or Odysseus thought this would be a perfect plan. But what happens is the Cyclops calls for help, which was Odysseus did think about it, and he did mention before how he was isolated, but now Odysseus knew that the Cyclops would have called for help, and when he calls for help, the other Cyclopes come to him. They're like, "Hey, what's wrong? What's happening? He says, surely nobody's hurt you, nobody's harmed you." And then the Polyphemus says, nobody tricked me, nobody ruined me. So as you can see, the name it sounds like you're saying nobody. So they're tricked and they're fooled, and it's like, oh, well, if nobody played you foul, then go pray to Poseidon to help you. They think he's kind of gone crazy. So his name trick worked. That was great. But now the Cyclops is standing in front of the cave in the morning, and feeling anything that goes by. So anything that tries to bolt by, he's going to catch. So Odysseus had to come up with another plan, another tactic. And he came up with one rather quickly. Since he had mentioned before that the sheep that the Cyclops have is very woolly and thick, he tied his men. He put 3 sheep together, and then under the middle sheep, he tied his men, so that when the Cyclops would feel for him, they would only feel the woolly sheep and not the man underneath. And then Odysseus took for himself the biggest and the choice of the flock, the best one. And that's how they got out underneath the Cyclops, once he opened up the boulder and let them out to milk, or to feed. Sorry. As you can see in this picture right here, you can see how Odysseus is hiding underneath the belly of the ram. A little bit of irony here. Nobody Polyphemus, the Cyclops talking to his sheep, says to him, "Nobody will get out alive, I swear. Nobody will not get out alive, I swear." Double negative there, so it means everyone will get out alive. Now Odysseus's men decide to, once they get out from underneath the sheep, they actually end up taking the sheep again, showing that they're roguish, and decided to steal his sheep and take him back to the ship. When they got back to the main ships, they see that they've lost several men, but they had to hurry up and get out of there. Now Odysseus is about to exhibit his hubris, his excessive pride. He cannot stand the thought, being his hero, that nobody would know that he's the one responsible for blinding the Cyclops. So he says here, "O Cyclops, would you feast on my companions? Puny am I in a caveman's hand. How do you like that beating we gave you, you damned cannibal, eaters of guests under your roof? Zeus and the gods have paid you." So he's taunting him, insulting him, thinking that he's got what he deserved. And as a result, the Cyclops. As a result, the Cyclops then tears off a bit of the hilltop, and throws at Odysseus' ship, and actually throws it in front of his ship, which causes the ship to now start going back towards shore. So now they're in big trouble, and they have to row twice as hard to try to get twice as far, and they are twice as far. But now Odysseus is about to speak again, and his men and crew are upset. They're screaming at him, "Stop, don't say anything. He may be blind, but he can hear where we are. And, if he throws it, he could hit us, or, we could be pulling back," because now they're pretty exhausted. But Odysseus doesn't listen to them and goes ahead with his rant onto the Cyclops. He says, "Ever a mortal man inquire how you were put to shame and blinded? Tell him Odysseus, raiders of city, took your eye, Laertes' son, whose home is on Ithaca." So he just basically gave his whole information about who he is, where he lives. So there's no mistaking what curse he could lay onto Polyphemus. I'm sorry, what curse he could lay onto Odysseus. So now we find out from Polyphemus, that's the name of the Cyclops, that apparently this all was foretold to him. He was told by a wizard that used to live among the Cyclopes that one day a person by the name Odysseus would come and blind him. But the whole time the Cyclops always thought that this Odysseus was some giant monster that would be able to blind him, not some small little human that he could have probably eaten and stabbed or killed or do whatever to. The moment he knew Odysseus' name, he would have done that. So it is a good thing Odysseus never told him his name from the beginning, since this was all foreshadowed. And so it's all coming together for Polyphemus. He's then tries to trick Odysseus into coming back, saying that, "Don't worry, my dad can fix this, come back." And Odysseus is like, "No, I'm not falling for that." And so he raises his hand, Polyphemus, the Cyclops, and he then prays to his father, Poseidon. And we have some more epithets where he calls him Blue Gurgler of the Isles. He uses Odysseus's epithet, raiders of city, O son of Laertes. Let me add that one, another epithet, especially since he told him that's who he was. And curses Odysseus. He says, "Let him lose all companions and return under strange sail to bitter days at home." Sorry, let me go back up here. Should destiny intend, let me go up here. Oh, hear me, Lord Blue Gurgler, Isle of the Islands. If I am in thine indeed, and thou art Father, grant that Odysseus, raider of seas, never sees his home. Laertes' son, who kept his hall in Ithaca. So he actually doesn't want him to get home. But he says, should destiny intend that he shall see his roof again among his family in his fatherlands, far be that day and dark the years in between. So now this explains why it's taking Odysseus 10 years. He's been cursed. He wants it to be a long time and make it dark between, so it understands why he has all these problems along the way. Let him lose all companions, which we know from the beginning in the invocation that he will lose all his companions, and return under strange sail to bitter days at home. The one thing that we didn't get to read in the invocation that the original invocation says is when Odysseus does make it home, he has to deal with these suitors. Suitors are men who want to marry a girl. And Penelope has been struggling with this ever since Odysseus, not since he left, but since he was supposed to return home. Everybody thinks he's dead. So we have all these men from all around these kingdoms trying to get Penelope to marry them so that they can then be king of Ithaca. And so when Odysseus gets home, he's still going to have to fight for his home and his wife. She's faithful to him, doesn't want to marry him, has actually been putting off this marriage as long as she can. But those are going to be the bitter days at home that he has to reclaim his home after being gone for so long. In these words he prayed, and the God heard him. Now he laid his hand upon the bigger stone and wheeled it around the Titanic for the cast, to let it fly in the black prowess vessel's track. But it fell short just aft the steering oar, and whelming seas rose giant above the stone to bear us onward towards the isle. So this time the cliff, or whenever he threw the big boulder, instead of it falling in front of the ship and pushing it back, it fell behind the ship, which caused the wave and pushed it out further to sea, which was a good thing. So Odysseus and his men, they do stop. They do make an offering. They take the lamb. The one that Odysseus had his men said he should have it. It was the best one, so he took it, and then he make a sacrifice to Zeus. It says here, then we unloaded the Cyclops flock to make division, share, and share alike. Only my fighters voted that my ram, the prize of all, should go to me. I slew him in the seaside and burnt his long thigh bones to Zeus beyond the storm clouds, Cronus' son, there's Epitaph, who rules the world. But Zeus disdained my offering. Destruction for my ship he had in store, and death for those who sailed with me, my companions. So Zeus didn't accept his offering, so his sacrifice. So that was not a good sign for him and his men. Now all day long, until the sun went down, we made our feast upon mutton and sweet wine. Till after the sun set with the gathering dark, we went to sleep above the wash of the ripples. When young dawn fingertips arose, Epitaph, touched the whirl, I rose the men, gave orders to the men in the ship to cast off the mooring lines, and filing in to sit in those besides the rowlock oarsmen in line dipped their oars in the gray sea. So we moved out, sad in our vast offering, having our precious lives, but not our friends. And that's how part one ends. So you can, like we've talked about Xenia today. So why did Odysseus' men bring with him to the Cyclops, or what? Sorry, did they bring? That's the wine. Why would they bring this gift with them as an offering to satisfy that Xenia? And of course, it ends up helping Odysseus out with tricking the Cyclops. I have a clip here so you can watch the Cyclops for yourself and get a better view from the Odyssey, the miniseries from the 1996 maybe. So you can watch that. Pause the video and watch that. So this just slides just go over how he tricked him. He gets the Cyclops intoxicated. He blinds the Cyclops. He gets out of the cave without getting caught, and then he exudes his hubris, which gets him in trouble. And now his curses cursed him and made his journey more difficult. We've talked about Homeric similes. Those are those detailed and complex comparisons of two unlike things or objects in the form of a simile. When he has that whole comparison up here of taking that hot iron and putting it into a bucket of water, and the steam and the bubbling so happened to the Cyclops' eye as it bubbled and hissed. We talked about, in the escape from Polyphemus, what positive and negative character traits does Odysseus demonstrate? He's very clever and smart with his trick about the false name, coming up with how to get out of the cave once he couldn't because of the Cyclops trying to catch it. It shows he's got some great craftiness and cleverness and guile, but his weakness is his pride, and he cannot resist that urge to let the Cyclops know he's the one who blamed him, that he outsmarted him, and as a result, he gets cursed. All right, we're going to tomorrow fill in our form for our flashback. When we go back and whenever we have an interruption in the moment and we go back in time to tell what happened previously, um, that's recounting everything in the flashback form, which is leads us to that nonlinear plot structure. We're going to go over that tomorrow in a worksheet, but we can go over a little bit just verbally right now. Odysseus, we're going to put it in chronological order and we're going to put it in nonlinear order. So again, when we meet Odysseus, he's with King Alcyoneus in Phaeacia, and then he starts telling about his trip from Troy. He fights the Cyclones. The Lotus Eaters are the next thing that they encounter, and then the Cyclops is where we're at right now. And so we have, as you can see, many more adventures to get to before we come back to full circle and then move forward in part 2. If you have any questions, please let me know. And again, this worksheet we're going to be filling out as we go along. I will give it to you tomorrow. Tomorrow we are going over, working on part 1, and we are having a library day. So with the what do you call it, the book fair, sorry. So I'll post a link in that you can shop at the book fair if you'd like to do that as well tomorrow. So if you have any questions, please let me know, and don't forget, tomorrow I will be doing a Google Meets. Have a good one.